This video is brought to you by my loyal patrons. Pledge as little as £1 a month and I do extra videos, plus additional extras for the higher tiers. Link in the description. A few years ago, filmmaker and director Brannon Carty set out on a mission to create a documentary about the Thomas the Tank Engine fandom. A Kickstarter was made with a goal of $2,500, which it reached very quickly. Now, after a few years, the film is finished and due to have its big premiere in late November. I have been given the pleasure to review this film before its release, sharing my thoughts and opinions about the documentary and if I enjoyed it overall. As a filmmaker myself and a degree in film production, I'm going to be diving into every little aspect about this film's production. Before I jump into the review, I'd like to say I'm going to keep this review as spoiler free as possible. But I'm going to put a little minor spoilers tag up here, just for caution to you as the viewer. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the video. If you aren't aware what an Unlikely Fandom is, it's a documentary releasing later this year focusing on the adult fandom of Thomas the Tank Engine, directed by Brannon Carty. The documentary was kickstarted all the way back in 2020 and was due to release a couple of years back now, but due to global issues this was pushed back to 2023. The documentary raised way over its goal of $2,500 and was in the green light to be fully produced. The idea was to allow the film to focus on the English-speaking Thomas fans across the United States, Australia and the UK, whilst also interviewing crew members and people associated with the Railway series and TV series. Straight up, I'm going to say I overall really enjoyed An Unlikely Fandom. It is very clear a lot of passion and dedication went into making this as professional as possible. It's a film that isn't just made for fans of Thomas the Tank Engine, but also a wider audience. This film is designed to appeal to everyone without getting into too many niches about Thomas the Tank Engine and sticking on the straight and narrow. I'm going to dive into a few different sections about the film, mainly focusing on the different departments and aspects of it. I want to start first of all with the overall content and pacing of the film, as this is what I have the most to say about. An Unlikely Fandom does pretty much what it says on the tin. It's really what you would expect. The film doesn't try to act epic or exciting, it remains at a humble and calm tone, much like the original show. Based on the excitement of the trailers, I thought this film was going to be very fast paced, and it seemed there was a lot of content to go through. But it actually flows pretty nicely. The people being interviewed show all different sides of the fandom, but thanks to Carty's direction, they tie in together brilliantly. No interview feels out of place. Everyone talks very professionally, which was lovely to see. I also enjoyed seeing interviews from different departments of the fandom. You get to see people who focus on music, cinematography, podcasts, prop collectors, and more. There might not be as many interviewees as you'd expect, but that is certainly a good thing. There is a good number of people being interviewed here, and any more would have made this film seem too crammed or too long. Of course, for any documentary like this, we have to get a backstory into Thomas's creation, both in Railway series and TV series form. Whilst we as the viewer know this information, it has to be displayed for a wider audience to understand context. But it is certainly nice to see this from a new perspective via Audrey's family and crew members of the classic series. In an archival interview with Christopher Audrey from Thomas the Tank Engine Man, we get a good understanding of how everyone is meant to enjoy Thomas, certainly giving the audience a wider eye into being more supportive of other people's passions, no matter how niche they are. The first act really dives into how each interviewee got into liking Thomas, and not how they entered a fandom. This segment is about 30 minutes long, also focusing on how these people got into real life steam trains, and this really works. Before watching this film, I had always assumed it would dive straight into the fandom's start, but beginning the documentary before any online forums existed is the right way to go. Liking Thomas didn't feel normal, but was a guilty pleasure to our younger minds. We hid it away, and Matt describes this best in his interview. The message during this section is definitely associate yourself with the right people and they will give you the respect you deserve for your hobby. It's a great message to younger fans of the show. I can remember when I was in school and only 2 of my friends knew about my love for Thomas the Tank Engine. But once you grow older, people really don't care. You'll find that all your friends have niche interests, and this is just another one of them. Today I spend time with a large group of friends, all of which know about my channel and love for Thomas, and they are all very respectful of it. I'm glad an Unlikely Fandom emphasised this message at the beginning. Not only does it allow younger fans to feel comfortable about their love, but it also makes non-fandom members realise there is more to life than following the norm. The first act of the film is very much about what brought people to love and enjoy Thomas. It's only once we enter the second act that we jump into the fandom and how people come together over it. Having the first act be solely focused on backstory and individual fandom members was a great idea. It allows you as the audience to understand their personalities before seeing them in a group together. In the second act, we get to see the fandom as a collective and together, which is really lovely. You get to see people who have been interviewed so far really come out of their shell. Not only do we get meetups, but we also get to see prop collectors, fandom members working on the show, and even a brief highlight on the TCC. These are all aspects the Thomas fandom already know, but imagine having no idea about the fandom and seeing visually how many fans have such a strong connection to Thomas. It's kind of crazy. Not many fandoms have that level of connection. Having these big meetups in the USA really drives the fact of how these people come together. Whilst I have been praising this film a lot so far, I did have a few negatives to talk about. This wouldn't be a review without them. One thing I found was the pacing really loses itself at the end of the second act and beginning of the third act. For what had been around 45 to 50 minutes of watching, the pacing had been solid, but then that and the movie slightly loses itself for me. We begin to leave the fandom and focus on specifics like products, the show as a whole, and even an Audrey backstory. These are all things I want to see in the film, but they are focused on for way too long at the runtime. Especially the Audrey backstory, which would have worked way better in the first act. It sort of jumps out of nowhere. I would have preferred more focus on the fandom meetups and events, or even an extra interviewee to fill this time. This is very much a personal preference, and I'm sure what is shown in this segment will actually appeal to a large majority of people. It is interesting stuff to see, but as a movie lover and filmmaker, I couldn't justify the 15 to 20 minutes that was spent during this part, mainly due to the fact we jumped straight into the conclusion after it. A bit more content with individual interviewees talking about their experiences, spending time with other fandom members, or even interviews with two members together would have worked a lot stronger in my personal opinion. However, that being said, the second half of the third act is really heartfelt. Seeing this fandom and crew members showing their love, that there is still a passion for the original show, is very touching. Kind words are said by people like Mike O'Donnell and Rick Siglau, which demonstrates the happiness the show and its legacy brings for them. With also the appreciation for the fandom members who express how much they love Thomas and the other side of life they can truly embrace. It's great being able to see people who have been able to enter the film and TV industry through this character and the videos they have created on this platform over the years. Now, let's dive into the next section. For Brannon Carty's first feature-length debut, he does a stellar job. Most people struggle when they move from short film to feature directing, but not Carty. Whilst I stated I found the pacing to lose track slightly, this isn't an unusual comment. It's something you see in many directorial debuts, and still see today with directors who have made over 10 movies. It is just a thing that can happen. I think Carty being allowed to spend a few years on this project has really helped shape it. Most people don't get this time in post-production to keep making changes, but due to being an independent project, I'm glad the time and effort has been spent by the whole team to make it as consistent as possible. The camera work in this film is stellar. You have to remember there were multiple units for this film, so there wasn't just one cameraman, and yet it was all very consistent. We moved from locations like Strasbourg to the Talyflin, and nothing feels out of place. The colour grade certainly helps with this. The interviews look fabulous with lovely setups. The only one that doesn't work is Abby Grant's, which was very clearly done in front of a green screen. When the film began, I remember saying wow with its opening shots. The visuals are very nice and elegant, and this helps to make this feel as professional as possible. This is very clearly not a film made by someone randomly picking up a camera. Carty and his team all have experience in film and TV, and they use that knowledge to its full potential. It's really wonderful stuff. John Hayes composed the music for the film, and if you don't know who he is, you really should check out his channel. John does such a stellar job of composing his own original themes, and they were definitely the right choice. The film has a very heartfelt message, and those themes are so nostalgic, they fit in so well. I'd like to emphasise how consistent the music is throughout the entire documentary. It's this lovely orchestral ensemble. As for sound design, I don't have much to say apart from it's really good. As a trained sound designer myself, it's something I listen out for regularly, and I was really impressed by how great this was. I'm not sure if the sound was recorded via boom or radio mics, or even maybe a mixture of both, but the levels are great. I enjoyed An Unlikely Fandom a lot more than I was expecting. Not to sound rude, but initially I thought this would feel quite cringy. I wasn't sure if this could appeal to a wider audience. But after watching the film, I can say this is one of the most professional documentaries I've seen in a while. Time and time again I watch documentary films on streaming sites that are nowhere near the quality of this. The tone of the camera work, interviews and music is incredibly professional and sincere. You can see there is so much passion in the film, not just from the crew, but from the interviewees. Everyone wants to tell their story in the most appropriate way possible. While some of the pacing felt off to me, it doesn't drive away from the overall premise that this is a fandom that comes together very regularly over this Talking Blue train. It's a humble film with a lot of heart from everyone involved. An Unlikely Fandom will premiere on Monday, November the 27th, 2023 at the Museum of Moving Image in New York City, and come into wider platforms at a later date. There are still a few tickets for the premiere on the Eventbrite site, and I have included a link in the description for anyone who is interested in attending. Once again, a big thanks to Carty for allowing me to review this film before its release. It was a very enjoyable thing to see. If you don't know already, I have a Patreon where I upload exclusive videos, model making photos, early access to certain videos and much more, all starting from as little as £1 a month. If you want to support the channel a little bit more, this is the place to go. Every little bit is appreciated. Thank you very much for watching. This video wouldn't have been possible without my loyal patrons. £1 a month and I do extra videos with some additional extras. Link in the description. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing or even leaving a like and a comment. It really does help the channel. I hope you all have a fantastic day and I shall see you in the next one.